Hi, my name is Sandy Padala. I'm founder and CEO of Rex Academy. We make it easy to learn and teach computer science skills. Today, our guest is Chuck Amos, CEO at Amos Group. Chuck has been long-time K-12 industry leader and innovator. Welcome to Rex Academy's very own podcast, Let's Talk Computer Science.
Wonderful. Sandy, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here talking with you.
Tell us a little bit about how it all started.
Oh gosh, so I have been in the education technology arena for about 30 years. Way back in the day, mid-1990s, I actually answered an ad out of the newspaper that was asking for candidates that had 5 years of education background, 5 years of sales, and 5 years of technology, of which I actually had 0, 0, and 0. And I told them that in my cover letter. I actually wrote and said, essentially, this sounds like an incredibly interesting opportunity. I have none of the skills that you're looking for, but I still think you should talk to me. They were kind enough to give me an interview. And at the interview, I really, it was a great conversation, continued to be incredibly excited about the opportunity. Ended up telling them in Minnesota, they've got 90 days to hire somebody and let them go with no fault. And I said to them, give me 90 days. If I'm a mess, if I don't succeed for you, I will simply shake your hand and thank you for the opportunity and not cause any trouble. And here I am nearly 30 years later. I haven't gotten that phone call yet to tell me that I'm a complete mess. And have loved the last 30 years that I've been able to spend in this industry. So that's a little bit about how I kind of started in the industry. And it has been certainly an incredible ride over the last 30 years.
Yeah, that is so cool. That's such an impressive and cute story. So tell us a little bit about your education experience. I mean, in the education industry, space, in the past 30 years, what did you learn, the ups and downs?
So such a great question. Thank you. So when I first started, I worked for an education reseller that was responsible for selling Apple computer products into the K-12 schools in Minneapolis, Minnesota metro area. Learned a lot at that point because we did everything that wrapped around the Apple technology, from networking to software to server infrastructure to, you name it, instructional solutions, kind of the whole kit and caboodle. After a couple of years of working with them, I ended up going to work for Apple directly. And it was interesting because Apple was looking to hire somebody to be responsible for North and South Dakota. And at the time, I had lived and been born and raised in the Minneapolis area for my entire life. And I had actually never been to North Dakota. When I applied for the position at Apple, I ended up getting the job and moving up to Fargo, North Dakota on the blind. It ended up being a really incredible experience. Not only is it stunningly beautiful and incredibly cold in the winter, but it was also just a great experience of, frankly, the hotbed of innovation and things that were happening at that point in the industry. So I traveled all over the Dakotas, and eventually, because I was one of the only people on the team at Apple that had both large urban district experience as well as rural experience, I was promoted to region manager. Initially being responsible for Minnesota and the Dakotas. Ultimately, I ended up running as a region manager most of the central United States, from Michigan over to the Dakotas and down to the Texas border. And then along the way, I actually met an incredible number of just amazing people, amazing educators. A small group of just some of the folks that I came across ultimately ended up starting a company called Atomic Learning. the person that came up with that idea, Jim Norwood, was a technology coordinator in Little Falls, Minnesota, and frankly, just ended up having a really wonderful idea of how to train teachers and students how to better utilize and understand software. And so eventually I ended up taking over as the CEO of that company. I left Apple, which was incredibly hard to do because, my passions for Apple still run deep. My passions for, good use of technology in the classroom still run very deep. But making the shift over there afforded me the opportunity to do a lot of things internationally. We did a lot of work in Australia and the United Kingdom, even in English-speaking countries in Africa, translating into Spanish and multiple other languages. So that ended up being an incredible experience. We ultimately ended up selling that company, and I went off and started consulting with a wide range of different technology companies, everything from large publishers to small software companies that were doing really innovative things and sort of everything in between. And then later took over as the CEO of a data and analytics company based out of Minneapolis that really was all about helping districts better utilize their data to make the best decisions that they can for deployment of resources, benefit of kids, benefit of the teachers, benefit of the community. And did that through this past spring. And we recently sold that company to another company that was in an interesting appropriately sort of overlapped part of the market that we could really bring a lot of value to each other. And then since then, I've been working on my initiatives around the Amos group and working on a couple of boards, including the board of Mind Research, which is a nonprofit math education solution out of California, working with Boxlight, which is a solution provider that provides everything from STEM solutions to interactive whiteboards to interactive content and distance learning solutions. And then, of course, being on the board of Rex Academy, which frankly struck a real chord for me in that we know that we have a gap in terms of students that are coming out with appropriate skill sets for computer science, coding, programming, and we know that gap is only going to get bigger. And the opportunity to work with you, Sandy, and the team at Rex and help to bring that in a more meaningful way into the education market in whatever way I can was frankly, another continuation of the great ride and the wonderful people and the opportunity to hopefully do some good as I continue on in my career.
Oh, it's our pleasure. I would like to dig more into your Apple experience. Apple being such a company, and it's almost impacted everyone in the world, or like at least half of the population in the world, if not more. So can you tell us like how Apple initially, it was more like an education company, right? How was it then versus now?
Yeah, I mean, so when I was at Apple, one of the things that I found so incredibly compelling was that the vast majority of the people who were either in the sales support, business development, were former educators or had been in the education industry for a significant period of time. I was probably the outlier in that, but frankly, I really relied on the incredible expertise of the people around me and the passion of the education division at Apple. And it was really an interesting experience because they really approached it deeply in their DNA at that point with how they could better serve and impact the education market in general. And at the time, they were really the go-to solution in education. I think they did all kinds of things back then that, people are still learning from, now, and you've seen replicated in many ways with other companies. When I was there, we had implemented a program called the Apple Distinguished Educator Program that still lives and thrives today. And it's vanguard educators from around the globe that share and collaborate and work with Apple to help bring best practices and innovative solutions out to others. They did things like every region manager had folks that were curriculum experts that you could go in, and we wouldn't just go in and talk about how do you use a computer. It was how do you use a computer effectively to best impact the outcomes for learning. There's still things happening around that area where we're trying to ensure that we're optimizing that today. They really did the official first one-to-ones. The first device that I remember that was specifically designed for education was championed by a bunch of people, but really championed by Dr. Terry Crane, that got the team on the Newton development side of the Apple House to put together a laptop that was a Newton operating system hard clamshell that was virtually indestructible with a handle on it. We later did big one-to-one initiatives with the early iBook back in the day that were blue or orange and, translucent white. And so they were really ahead of their time in terms of the things that they were trying to accomplish. It was never really just about selling technology. It was about selling technology that makes an impact and makes the technology more effective, which frankly for me was part of what made it so much fun, such a great learning experience, such a great place to cut my teeth and grow up in the industry. But it also was, you got to answer for your forecast every week, and you got to make sure that your team is doing what your team needs to do. So there was all the corporate pressure, but there was a lot of passion in how we approached what we were doing. It was a wonderful time. And frankly, the stock price was at like $13 for the employee stock purchase program about 6 splits ago at that point. So if we talk about regrets, it's not holding on to every single one of those shares that I probably should have held on to.
Yeah, I know, who imagined, right?
Oh yeah, who would have known?
Yeah. Yep. So I want to switch gears towards what's happening right now. So what do you think, will be some major changes that will come out of this pandemic?
So obviously it's been horrible for everybody. I'd be remiss if I didn't say, what a huge tip of the hat I give to every one of the educators, every one of the parents that has been forced to learn how to be a homeschool teacher, the administrators that have had to decide between bad decisions and worse decisions, and all the challenges that we've all faced. But I do think there are some silver linings that are coming out of this. Number one, the equity gap for technology was brought to the foreground so clear and so undeniably over the last 6 months that we have seen such a rapid deployment of devices and Wi-Fi hotspots and solutions to help close that gap. Have we closed it? By no means. Have we closed it? Have we made a great amount of progress in a short period of time? Probably more than we would have made over the next 5 or 10 years, if not for COVID. And do we still have work to do? Unquestionably. Having kids line up outside of a Taco Bell to be able to do their homework is inexcusable. It shouldn't happen. Having communities that don't have access to high quality, high speed internet connectivity, inexcusable. It shouldn't happen. But they're now at the foreground of the conversation. Whereas before we were able to ignore those, I think those are going to be permanent changes. I also think, in spite of all the challenges that we've had with distance learning, I think education has really started to move the right direction. How do we do this effectively? And how do we do it in a way that blends in when we do get back into schools full time, that makes it truly work and allows a level of flexibility that I think will probably have some long-lasting repercussions for how we organize and operate schools. I also think clearly, not even school-related, we've proven that people can maintain their productivity and actually increase their productivity from a work perspective when they're working at home. There is a work-life balance. Now, I personally have been home officed in one form or another for probably 25 years. So for me, I don't see it as a revolutionary concept. I know a lot of people do. I love interacting and being with people in the office, but I also think if we can save the commute, we cut down on carbon, we cut down on commute times, we cut down on frustration, we increase productivity. Schools and the work are, in my opinion, being reconfigured in a way that will have a lasting impact. When a kid is sick, you don't necessarily have to call in sick as a parent. You can now pretty easily say, I'm going to work from home. And guess what? While your sick child is sleeping and recovering, you can continue to care for them and be productive. Talk about a great opportunity for better work-life balance. And obviously, that's one of any number of examples that we could look at that I think will have lasting and hopefully positive impact. I would say that, in no way am I dismissing the challenges that districts, students, teachers, parents have all faced over the last many months. It's been brutal. I think we all just want 2021 to come here and hit the hard reset button and see if we can't return to whatever normal is going to look like. But I do think there are some real positives that will ultimately come out of this for work-life balance, kids, distance learning, and the ability to adapt a little more quickly, and certainly solving some systemic problems that have been there for a long, long time.
Yeah. Okay. Can you talk to us a little bit about the state of computer science education in US?
So as a guy who's run multiple software companies, I will tell you that it is incredibly difficult to find the kind of talent. They are proverbial unicorns in many cases, where you've got somebody, or you find somebody that has the development capacity and competency, has the ability to work in a team, and the personality to be able to flourish in a dynamic environment. There's a gap in just the pure numbers of people that are coming out with computer science degrees. There is a gap that starts probably as early as second and third grade. We start to see a gap in terms of mathematics performance, interest in STEM and science that shows up on gender lines that is, has been around for a long time. I think we've seen a lot of effort to try to break that down. But that then promulgates through the system, and we just simply don't put enough people in either professional credentialing programs, for instance, the professional type of credentialing that Rex would offer around Java or Python, or put them into 2-year schools or 4-year schools or more in terms of computer science degrees and computer science expertise. When I find somebody that's got a computer science background, that knows how to code, that can communicate well, like I said, they're a unicorn. I hold on to them with everything I have. And so that was clearly one of the key reasons for me wanting to participate and be involved in the work that you're doing, Sandy, here at Rex, is because that gap exists. It's not good enough to simply say the gap exists. It's critical to actually do something about it, and do something in terms of contributing time, effort, intellectual energy. And so I'm hopeful. I think we all know there's opportunity. I think we know that there are great solutions. There's no question that kids can do it. They just need to have the opportunity to do it.
How do you think US should address the gap in the CS education?
I think we need to mandate it. Schools are overwhelmed in a lot of cases. You know, the question that I think most educators will ask whenever they're asked to bring in something new is, if you want me to teach that, what don't you want me to teach? Because we've only got X amount of hours in a day. So I think it's really critical that we make it a priority, that we are putting out top talent, that we are investing in computer science talent. We all know this is so critical to long-term economic development for our country, competitiveness around the world, all the things that this feeds into. I think it needs to be baked in as a thread starting from third grade all the way through college. It should be, in my humble opinion, done in such a way that it's interdisciplinary. Coding doesn't live in and of itself. The only reason someone should code, well, I mean, there's tons of reasons to code. Some people do it for fun. Some people love to tinker with computers as hobbies. That's all awesome. But it's critical from my perspective as a business person and a business owner that coding have a purpose, that you're creating something of value out of it. And so if you're in a history class, part of that history class can in fact be putting together a presentation and using coding to put together a web page that is delivering that presentation. Or by the time you get into high school, putting together a piece of software, learning how to create a database of the presidents and be able to have that delivered, whether it's through an Access database or a MySQL database, so that kids are walking out with skill sets that are in fact commercially applicable, but are tied in an interdisciplinary way. Because to me, the coding is most valuable when it's tied to a real solution that's meaningful, that can turn into something that makes things better.
Yep, totally agree. Totally. So I have a fun question. If you have the superpower to change one thing in education today, what would that be?
Oh, I love this question. So I think education faces a lot of challenges. We've got, teacher shortages. We've got funding gaps. We've got skill gaps between, rural and urban and suburban. There are so many challenges that education faces that, frankly, they really do an awesome job of delivering what they deliver with unbelievable passion, unbelievable commitment, and doing a really good job for our kids. If I could wave a magic wand for one thing, I would love to see us move to a more Socratic method of educating. I think about my own personal experience and the times that I've been with mentors or people who knew more, my early days at Apple, my early days when I just got into the industry after answering the ad out of the newspaper, sitting and asking questions that were in context and having people that could debate with me, help me understand where my thinking was right, where my thinking was wrong, help improve my ability to not only ask questions, but also articulate answers and have that back and forth debate in context, I think were some of the most meaningful and impactful times in my personal development. I still see that. Sitting down with people when we can have a dialogue and a debate and a passionate conversation and still be friends after we're done debating something. And it's not about right or wrong. It's about improving either our ability to conceptualize or understand. Knowledge isn't enough. And we spend a lot of time trying to disperse knowledge. But knowledge in some ways is a bit of a fool's game. We really want understanding. Because if you understand how to solve problems, if you understand how to interact with people, if you understand how to make an impact socially, financially, whatever, you can get the knowledge. That's the easy part. being able to understand and think critically and dissect, I think, is absolutely the skill that employers are looking for. And I think it's sometimes what we lack in terms of our ability to even have civil dialogue around critical issues, because we don't necessarily see broad perspective as much as we should. So I would go back Socratic and be able to debate things we don't like, be able to defend things we do like, be able to understand and be passionate and love and care for whomever is participating in that debate with us without judgment, rather with the intent of finding understanding.
Yeah, I would love to go to that school and re-educate myself.
Huh.
That'll be so interesting and useful, and I would love to be in that school, not be forced to go to the school. So, any closing thoughts or advice to our educators who are in the middle of the most challenging times ever?
Hang in there, take time for yourself. Don't forget that if you run your batteries down and put yourself in a position where you haven't refilled your reserves, you're not going to be able to make as big of an impact. I talk to educators every day, and I know how passionate they are. I know how much they care. Don't forget to take care of yourself and make sure that you're doing the best for you as you go along, and catch your breath. And also stop and think about what you've done. Here we are 6 months into this, 7 months into this horrible situation, and so much has been accomplished. And while there's still work to do, and that's always the case. I don't remember any time ever talking to an educator and having them say, "Yeah, I'm done. There's really nothing more for us to do." Those words have never been uttered in my experience. Stop, take time, care for yourself, appreciate where we've come, understand where we need to get to and the things that need to be done, but do it in a way that doesn't really harm you in the long run and brings your best to the people that you're serving.
That is such a positive message. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Chuck. Thank you for your time. I've learned quite a bit.
Andy, I so appreciate the opportunity to talk with you, and I so appreciate the opportunity to work with you on the great work that Rex Academy is doing.